All right, this week is the Valley Fever Awareness Week. According to the Arizona Department of Health, 6 to 10% of dogs living in Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal will become sick with valley fever.
So what can we do to keep our pets safe? Anita Roman, live with the Arizona Humane Society. Anita, I would guess if we're talking 10% of pets, that's a huge number. That's got to be way more than the number of humans who get valley fever, right?
It is, and if you think about it, that's because your dogs are out there, they're rooting in the dust, they're digging things up, so they're just a little bit closer to all those spores than the people are, because even though the monsoons, for example, can kick things up a little bit, the dogs are really digging in the dirt all year long, and the spores are there all year long. It's not just during the monsoon that we worry about it. So I'm with Dr. Melissa Thompson here at Arizona Humane Society, and Fraggle, who's just waking up and a little bit nervous, and I do have to say Fraggle is up for adoption, so you should come meet this sweet pup. But let's talk about valley fever. First of all, what are the signs and symptoms?
Well, the signs and symptoms they're very broad. So we can see dogs that come in that are just not feeling 100% themselves, to dogs that are coughing. We can have dogs that are limping because it can get into the bones. We can actually see dogs that are having seizures because it can get into the spine and into the brain. So the symptoms are very, very broad, which makes it very hard for a doctor to try to figure out what's going on with your pet, right?
And it makes it hard for the owner then. So at what point do you look at your dog and say, because you try to be a little conservative. You don't always want to drag the poor pup to the vet because sometimes they're a little bit nervous about it. At what point as a pet owner do you say we need to get them in there?
Well, in private practice, you as a pet owner, you see them day in, day out. And so you notice those little subtleties. Here in the shelter, it's much more difficult for us, right? And so we're looking for the bigger picture. But when I was in private practice and we would see pets, and the owners would bring them in, they're like, you know what, doc? He's just been off of his food for a couple of days. He just doesn't seem to have the same energy that he used to, or he might have a little bit of a cough. And so as a private owner, you see those things much sooner. So we would see those dogs and they would come in and they would have it in their lungs. They would just be a little punky. Yeah. We didn't often see it in the bone, or I didn't with my clients. Here in the shelter, we don't have those capabilities of catching them so early. And a lot of these pets have been roaming the streets or, left out in backyards. So we see a lot more here in the shelter where it's actually in the bones or actually in the brain. So
we'll talk about treatment in 1 second, but can we talk about prevention?
Prevention is hard. There's not really much that we can do to prevent it. Like you were mentioning before, these guys are outside all the time. They're sniffing around. And even if we kept them in a bubble in our homes, right, the spores get in the air. We get the monsoons, the winds kick up. So trying to make sure that your pet is as healthy as possible, because we rely on our immune systems to help us fight it off. So that is key, making sure that we try and keep our pets healthy overall.
And then once, if they are diagnosed, how do we treat valley fever?
Valley fever is treated with an antifungal medication. So it's an oral medication. Unfortunately, it's not inexpensive. So that's where it gets to be difficult for some people to treat their pets. But it is, again, making sure that they're as healthy as possible, feeding them good quality food, making sure they're getting all their nutrients, making sure that they're in a less stress environment, not being here in a shelter where it's crazy and stressful, and then getting those oral medications.
Once they're on that medication, are they on it for the rest of their lives, or will they eventually be able to wean off of it?
That really depends on the pet and the severity of the case. So there are some that may be treated for 6 months to a year, and there's others that may be on it for life.
Is there a time of year where you've seen increase of valley fever cases?
Here in the shelter, unfortunately, we see them all year round.
And that is something that people need to be aware of. This is something that hits year round, not just during the monsoon season, like a lot of people think.
Right. And so we think about the valley fever getting stirred up in the monsoon season, but it can take a little while to see those clinical signs. So it's not like we have a storm tonight and then tomorrow morning your dog is sick. It can take a little while for that to set in.
Great information. You guys, last year I did a special project, if anyone remembers, in Tucson, University of Arizona, and they're doing a huge study on valley fever, concentrating on how it affects dogs, and they're very close to getting a vaccine and testing, and so it's really incredible what they're doing, because it takes the lives of a lot of dogs if not caught.
It can be dangerous. You don't always know what's wrong with them. That's the challenging thing.
Right.
Anita, thank you. Good reminder.
And humans, too. It seems like it's so mysterious. We're just kind of getting a handle what valley fever is.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so